So joining us now from his palatial estate in Brooklyn, New
Yeah,
York, through the miracle of the internet, it's Joshua Zarbo of Spoon, the Monahans, and Teachrock. Joshua, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man? It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
So hyped that our mutual friend Sean connected us up. This is great. I'm a huge Spoon guy and I've dug into your catalog a little bit, doing research for this episode, and I'm excited to get into it. So, first of all, how are you managing during the pandemic? What is the day job like? What is playing like? What is family life like?
Family life is complicated. It's good. I'm not married, but I have a girlfriend, and she lives in the neighborhood. We both arrived in New York around the same time a few years ago. So luckily, she's close by, and we've kind of created a bubble. I don't see much of my family down in the DC area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did see them recently, but it had been about a year or more since I had seen them because I didn't travel at all. I didn't I didn't leave Brooklyn at all. I didn't leave Bay Ridge from March until I think October. I
Wow.
did not go anywhere. I didn't get on the MTA. I just stayed. So work though is work is good. Work is remote, and I'm actually more focused. We can talk about that in a bit as far as what I'm doing day to day, but
Yeah.
I'm writing mostly kind of music and arts curriculum, so it's really nice actually. I have to say I've been getting a lot of kind of creative work done. I'm really kind of disciplined and structured, and I get up at 6. I play music. I don't turn on a device. I don't get on electronic media until 8 a.m. So I'm basically having breakfast and creating, and for the first couple hours, and then I try and always end my day like that. So it's been nice to have kind of that like smaller world,
Yeah.
but I realize that I say that from a place of privilege because a lot of people are hurting, and I'm grateful to be employed and grateful to have healthcare. So
Man, I can really relate. I'm also I'm in higher ed, but similar. I actually do work not dissimilar to yours during the day, but yeah, not having people come by my desk every 5 minutes to interrupt me, like having these long stretches where I can focus on, be it creative stuff or the 9 to 5 stuff. It's been like, in a lot of ways, a blessing. I mean, and I share your sentiment about recognizing that as a privilege, but also like really trying to value this weird opportunity that we're faced with at the moment, and we've got to take advantage of it, the good and the bad, I guess, right?
totally, man,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's it's strange times. I When it first started happening, I was learning Tony Levin's bass part, kind of bringing it back to what we're doing. But
Yes, please.
I was learning Tony Levin's bass part to "Nobody Told Me" by John Lennon
Okay.
in like March when everything started locking down, and like Lennon references New York City, and just in the lyric and the hook is kind of like "Nobody told me there'd be days, like strange days indeed," and it was like, and that seems like such a long time ago, and to think that we've been kind of like going through so many different things during the past like 9 months has just been, it's been crazy, truly like strange days.
Yeah. Well, what was the impetus to learn the Tony Levin line? Was this like a cover song you were working on? Or were you doing it for your own edification?
My own edification, I
Gotcha.
just started thinking of that song because it was like Lennon, I believe it's a song that he wrote when he was here in New York, and I think it was close to the end of his life. I think it was one of his later tunes, and Tony Levin's bass line is great on it, and so it was all kind of merging together. I was spending more time on the instrument. I was thinking about what am I going to do during this lockdown creatively, and um, yeah, it all kind of came like they were all those parts were meeting, like what was happening, the New York references, having time to be at home to just play and record and write songs, and so yeah, it all kind of came
Awesome.
together.
Well, I mean, I've got so many questions. I almost don't know where to start, but let's start at the beginning, I guess. Hopefully, these will all stay running around in my head and we'll get to everything. But how is it that you got started playing bass? It's not like, I don't know, everybody's journey is different, but like, if you were primarily known as a guitarist, I don't feel like I'd be asking you this question, but because we're bass players, I ask everybody this question. Why bass? Why not something else?
So true. So true. Also, I have to ask you, are you wearing a Mets hoodie?
So it's actually from a tattoo shop in Bushwick. It's Allied Tattoo. The owner dudes are all
Awesome.
hardcore Mets fans. I grew up a Mets fan. I'm not one now. I'm sort of a lapsed Mets fan, but yeah, I still rep it.
I dig the colors.
Yes,
I
it's
dig the
great.
Mets colors. Sorry, Yankees, but the Mets colors are just better. They're just
Yeah,
better.
and I think it wasn't until decades after my Mets fandom had lapsed that I understood that they took the colors from the Giants and the Dodgers and the two teams that had left to go west and melded them together to make the Mets
I
colors.
didn't know that.
It's a cool story, yeah.
Wow. So for bass, I have a cousin who's actually here in New York. He lives in Bushwick, actually, and he is a kind of a he's my dad's cousin, so I guess whatever that means. So he's my dad's generation, a couple years younger. But he had this career that started with he was in this early incarnation of Stray Cats with Brian Setzer,
Oh my gosh.
and so he was this kind of he was this kind of musician dream like hero guy of mine, and he stayed with me and my family. One summer he was coming through town, not playing, he was just kind of traveling, and I was at that impressionable age and my friends were picking up instruments. This was probably like 12 or 13,
Mhm.
and music was becoming part of my identity, and he took me to a music store in my neighborhood, and so I started going back to that place because we had in other places that I would have to go, and it was walking distance. And I just started going in there, and I was getting into music. My friends were picking up guitars, but I was really into Kiss. I had a really close friend that was into Kiss, and I saw the Animalize tour VHS concert on VHS, and Gene Simmons has a bass solo in it. He's got the axe bass and everything. And so I started thinking, oh, maybe that. And I was in a Maiden. I was getting into Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
So Steve Harris had like a real prominent role. I was into Motley Crue. So Nikki Sixx had a real prominent role. And I just saved all this money to buy something because I made my parents, once I was getting close to it, I made a deal with my parents where they said, if you buy the instrument, we'll pay for the lessons. And so I saved up enough money. And in that music store was a Fender bass, a Fender Precision bass. And it was like the most well-known brand that I knew. And I bought it and I started taking lessons a couple weeks later at that same store. And that was how it all started.
That's awesome. That's similar. That story is the trajectory is so similar to mine. I actually, I must be a few years older than you, I guess, because I saw Kiss. It was the first concert I ever went to, and I was really young. I too had a friend who was super into Kiss, and I think we must have been 10 years old, and they were touring on Dynasty or something. Because I think they played "I Was Made for Love."
Nice.
Yeah, they played "I Was Made for Loving You" and everybody booed because that was the big like disco crossover hit at the time. So that was comical. But yeah, Steve Harris plays the huge role. Like I heard Invaders. I bought the picture disc of Number of the Beast, like unheard. It's like this is the coolest thing I've ever seen at my local record store. Brought it home, dropped the needle on Invaders, and I was like, okay, whatever that sound is, that's what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And so yeah, a lot of the same touchstones there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the first thing I bought was a late '70s Matsumoku made Univox High Flyer with the strings were like 3/4 of an inch off the fretboard. Um, not very accommodating or easy to play. I bet you had a better time of it with your Fender P bass.
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was, but like, I'm not a very big person. That's one of the reasons why I got into short scales.
Yeah.
And so I was even shorter because I was 15 when I
Yep.
started playing. so I was even smaller. I was probably 100 pounds, 110 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
And it was like it was like a mid 80s or early 80s. It was like an 82 or an 84. I didn't know anything about gear, so I wasn't
Sure.
like specking out the manufacturing date or anything. So, it was like robust.
Yeah,
It
man.
was like a huge thing on me. So it's like I'm
For
kind of
sure.
surprised that I was able to like wield that thing,
Yeah, and those
And
those like those early 80s, I don't know if it was USA made, Fullerton, like those are
yeah, it
like
was.
the golden era right now. People are paying crazy money for those. That's awesome.
Well, it wasn't one of the reissues.
Hmm.
It was like a standard model. It wasn't one of
Sure.
like the 62s or something, but yeah, I wish I had kept it. I mean, we might get into it later, but I traded it once I went to college. I brought it with me and in Texas, and I traded it in and got a Rickenbacker because I was getting way into like McCartney and Magical Mystery Tour era stuff, and I didn't have like the money to have two basses like that.
Nope. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
yeah, I for the majority of my pro playing career when I was actually, employed as a musician and stuff, I never owned more than one bass. And now I don't know if you can see this, like that's some of the quiver right now. It's just like I just acquired them. It's idiotic, man. I don't know how or why I do this,
Yeah.
but well, let's get into this. So you ended up in Texas at school, and you were in Austin, I take it.
I transferred to go to college. I was started in George Mason, which is in the
Hmm.
Washington D.C. area, right after high school.
Yeah.
I was taking upright with a guy named George Vance, who taught upright at the university. And my high school girlfriend had broken up with me. I was heartbroken. I was talking to him about it at a lesson one day, and we weren't like the greatest buddies. He was like a real stern, like old class music, National Symphony. He was in the National Symphony. Um, but he said to me, "You should go to the University of North Texas." And I was like, "Wow, okay, I don't know where that is." Well, it turned out that I had an down there. It's outside of Dallas, and I transferred and went to school there. And right as that was happening was like the whole Seattle Nirvana early '90s grunge explosion,
Sure.
alternative music explosion. So like there was all of this like life happening in local music scenes, and Denton kind of had like a junior version of the Austin music scene at the time. And then you could go to Dallas. Dallas was only like 30-minute drive away. And that's what happened is I got down there right as all this stuff was kind of, I mean, they already had Denton is known as this like just A+ music school, but also like the alternative thing was happening, and young people were way into it. It wasn't like a jazz thing that was, which was also prevalent there, but it wasn't like that. It was like, you know, young people were really into like going out and seeing shows. And it was just luck that I ended up kind of in a town and in an area and at a time when like shit was really taking off. So that's how I ended up in Texas.
Yeah.
But then I went to Austin later when I joined Spoon.
And how did that gig come your way?
Sean is a part of that. Sean Kirkpatrick is a part of that. And I became really close, and we formed a band together. And we were best friends. He's one of my best friends. And we had become obsessed. This is a few years later, obviously. And I was just obsessed with like independent music, like Matador and Thrill Jockey and Sub Pop and Merge and all those labels. And my favorite band at the time was Pavement. And we went to see Pavement in Dallas. And Spoon was the opening band because they were about to be signed to Matador. I don't know if they were signed yet, but they were about to be signed to Matador. And Sean and I saw them, and they were actually, Pavement was good that night, but like Spoon blew us away. We had no idea who they were. Three-piece, Britt, Jim, and John Crosland, who was the producer, but he was playing bass with the band.
Hmm.
And Sean and I saw them, and we just kind of logged that name into our heads. And then we found out they were coming through Denton, where we lived. and they were playing at the local venue. That was like our venue. That was our scene. That was where we hung out. And Sean and I knew the promoter. We got on the bill. We played before them. A few other bands on the bill, so I'm not sure where we played on the bill. And they liked my playing for some reason. They were having problems with their bass player. They liked my playing. And Jim, you know, the drummer in Spoon, came up to me after our set and just talking me up. What happened is that we had a drummer in our band, Sean and my band, but we used Sean's drum kit. So it wasn't even the drummer's drum kit, but I was kind of on duty that night to pack up the drums. And Jim Eno saw me packing up the drums and he's like, the bass player's packing up the drums? And so he started talking to me about that. And I'm like, yeah, I love to like load out the gear and like help out. And they liked what they saw. They could see that I would like be somebody helpful on the road. And
Yeah.
And he gave me his number and we got in touch. And then it must have been a couple of months later or less than that. They asked me to come down to Austin. And I remember it vividly, the house that I lived in and like just spending hours. I learned everything on Telephono and some other covers they were doing and some new songs I think maybe they were working on, or maybe the Soft Effects EP songs that were about to come out. And I just learned everything top to bottom, and I did really well at the audition, and that was it.
That's so phenomenal. I mean, I can't so I'm a Spoon head. I enjoy Telephono, but like the classic era for me starts with Sneaks and like, you know, it's essentially all the records you played on. I'm not saying it's because those are all the records that you played on, but in my mind, that comprises the classic output for me. It's probably because those are all the records you played on, though. I mean, the way you and Jim groove, it's like it's preternatural. I'm almost surprised that you guys didn't like grow up playing in like junior high bands together. Y'all are like locked. Like few rhythm sections are. I was just, revisiting some stuff today and was just struck by how pocketed y'all were.
Yeah, Jim and I, there was something really special about that. There was something very special. Like from day one, he and I were like that. We got along. We always roomed together on tour. Before I lived in Austin, I would travel down for rehearsals or recordings or shows, and I would stay with Jim. We just worked really well together. I really liked him, and he was he was just such a solid drummer. He just had like great time. He played really well. He had a lot of power, but there was finesse behind it. Mm-hmm. He came up with really interesting parts. And he was just like he was a really just brilliant guy, or he is. He's just a really smart, sharp, he comes from an engineer's kind of training, that was his trade, was electrical engineering and computer design and chip design. That's how he ended up in Texas.
Crazy.
And so, that's how he ended up in Austin and all that. But we just clicked, and thanks for saying that. It just translated over to the music and stuff.
Well, I think
it was really cool.
Yeah, you guys's pocket. I don't want to sound too effusive here and too fanboy, but like you guys do your thing, and then a lot of times Britt and the other guys are like, well, they're just like floating over what you guys are doing. Like the rhythm section is like the entire machine, and other guys are just throwing ornamental stuff over the top of it. And that's what makes, to me, the records up through not Kill the Moonlight. Is there one more that you played on after that? All those records. That's what.
Yeah, Gimme Fiction.
Gimme Fiction. Yeah. That's what imparts that sort of classic Spoon sound. I mean, you guys may have started out as one of the bands that may have been influenced by Pavement, but eventually became this thing that is utterly its own unto itself. And I feel like that owes a huge debt to you guys holding it down on the bottom end and everybody else kind of ornamenting over the top of it. That's what I hear when I listen to Spoon at any rate.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that Jim and I really helped Britt realize the ideas that he had. You know, we provided like a really strong, vibrant framework and kind of pocket and rhythm section for him to do his thing on top of that, and to really like, you know, just to really like set it was like we provided like a really good setting for him to put like those gems of those songs in there, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So it helped him shine really brightly, which was really it was really amazing to be a part of that, because you could tell that it was happening. I could, at least.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's get a little bit into the gear. I'd like to ask folks, you know, if you had to restrict yourself to one instrument for the rest of your life, what would it be? Would it be the Gibby that you're playing right there?
Yeah.
Let's hear about it. What year?
This is a 2010.
Oh wow.
They call it an SG bass, but I'm wearing a Gibson shirt and I'm playing a Gibson instrument. There are tons of Gibson instruments back there, but I will say a little bit of smack about Gibson, even though I love them, that they don't really understand their bass legacy brand. So unfortunately, they call it an SG bass now, which is unfortunate. But basically, it's an EB3 reissue,
right?
That I got from them in 2010, and it's the most amazing bass I've ever played. And as far as feel, it's got like a faded kind of, it's got like a super, super thin nitro cellulose finish. You can see that like there's distress, and that's only from like the last 10 years of me playing it.
Dang.
But like the neck profile is a little bit more like a mid 60s, where it's a little bit wider. And it's just like, I love it. It's probably weighs like a little less than 7 pounds, maybe 7 pounds.
Gosh.
So it's nice and light. And I can just do everything on it, you know? I can like play super, maybe I muted myself. I can play really high. I can play, there's a lot of access, and it fits for where my hand needs to be. I've totally like tricked it out and changed out all the hardware and changed out the knobs. And I've told people in my family, like, when I die, cremate me. And if you can, strip everything off of this and burn this with my body.
So yeah, I do love the EB series, but one thing they did not get right was that 3-point bridge. So I see you've got the Supertone, the Hipshot Supertone on there. It's a great upgrade. I love those things.
Yeah, it is. I did a Hipshot on the. Sorry, I need to get into gear mind with you, so I'll make sure to do that.
That's all right.
Hipshot for the bridge, and then I changed out all the tuners too.
The ultralights.
Hip shots.
Yeah.
And I put a drop D on there, although I'm not using it that much. I changed out the electronics to a master blend, and then I put a tone styler tone knob in there.
Cool.
And strap locks and Monahan sticker on the back.
Nice.
But I wish we could be together so I could show you, but there's just tons of like distressing and just aging that's already happened on it. Even on the back, the black finish is starting to really wear down to the mahogany. So it's just very simple to play.
That's awesome.
So this is the one. This is the one.
I feel like short scales are having a moment, but you've been about them for a while. It's I'm personally having a moment with short scales. I was never into them before. I think because I mostly in my life have played like heavy punk and hardcore and stuff, and short scales don't really lend themselves to that. But now that I'm playing, like, I play a lot of dub stuff, a little bit of country. That's, more P-based territory, but like a lot of sort of classic rock and soul stuff. You want that sort of tubby, thumpy, short scale thing, and I've just been all about it lately. But you were clearly ahead of the curve there. What do you attribute that to?
Thank you, Ian. That's so nice of you to say. It's, you know what? I really appreciate you saying that. That's a really interesting story, because I've noticed that. And that's why I get a little bit annoyed with my Gibson homes, because strike homes, my Gibson fellows, because it is having a moment, and yet they are not producing like, I bought the one thing that they've produced, and I can show it to you later if we have time.
Yeah.
The Les Paul tribute, the Les Paul Junior tribute bass double cutaway, and it's nice, but like they're having, like, you're right, short scales are totally having their moment right now, and yet I don't see Gibson really responding to that with like a reissue of a 69 or a 61 or a 74 or something, you know, or a Les Paul recording bass, or one of those super cool ones that they had, you know?
Yep. Yeah. Meanwhile, Fender is reissuing every iteration of every Mustang and Bronco and Music Master they've ever put out, even though most of those were, you know, not all that hot to begin with. The Mustang's a classic. So
You know your bass world really well. You're right. And that's the other thing. And I'm sure you could speak to this as well, which is that's probably why when it comes to bass guitar, Fender is like, you know, Apple or Amazon and just crushing everything. And Gibson kind of plays the, like, you know, they play like the redheaded stepchild who's been also like sent to an island to live when it comes to their bass legacy, except for Thunderbirds, maybe.
yeah.
You know?
Getting back to Nikki Sixx.
But like this, to me, honestly, interrupt you. To me, honestly, this is a far superior short scale than anything Fender has ever produced. The way that the neck is set in here, it sits out far enough that it feels more like a long scale. When I play a Mustang, it feels like a toy, because it's like here for first position. It's like where this G is for first position.
Yeah.
But when I play these EB3s, it, for my body especially, it feels like I'm at first position pretty naturally. And the way that they have their fingerboards radiused, these are really high radiuses, like 12 inches, so it's super flat.
Yeah.
It's super smooth to play on, and for somebody kind of cultured like me, it's like a dream.
Yeah, that's awesome. So nobody is really playing live these days, but I do want to know, like, I don't know, if you had a gig tomorrow, what could in a sort of general sense, what would your live rig be? I know you're a Gibson guy, Aguilar guy. What do you show up to the gig with?
I usually, I need to have an Aguilar Tonehammer DI. And I'm really into the MXR Mini bass Dynacomp. I bought that. I think they maybe put that out this year or last year. And it's super great. I love it. I've been searching and kind of going to boutique brands and looking around. And but I love a lot of the MXR bass innovation stuff. Yep. So if I can't have any pedals, it's a tuner and a DI. That DI has to be the Aguilar Tonehammer. But outside of that, if I can bring a compressor or a couple other pedals, I'm probably going to bring some MXR stuff from their stations. Like I have the bass Dynacomp and I have the Phase 95, and I got stations, but I have their bass distortion that they did in a collaboration. You might know, I can't remember who MXR collaborated with somebody on their new bass distortion pedal, and it's pretty sick. It's nice.
I remember hearing about that when it came out. I had a buddy who was working at Dunlop, who was working on some of that stuff, and it's really cool. I need to get on that comp. Yeah. I'm currently using the TC Electronics one, which is fine. But I totally relate to the like going down the boutique rabbit hole. A buddy bought. I was really curious about the Cali 76 because the LA 76 is like, that thing's money. You put it on every track and it just sounds incredible. Yeah. If I could have that in a pedal form factor, it'd be great, but they're like $300. So I waited until a buddy bought one and I borrowed it, and I was like, it's not doing the magic thing. So I ended up with the $50 TC Electronics one instead. but the MXR one sounds very intriguing. All right, I know you're also
It's
a big.
great, and it's got a lot. Sorry, it's got a lot of like sculpting capabilities. Just got nice features for that.
That sounds awesome. Any other cool pedals? I know on your website you have an extensive list, a lot of Morley stuff I saw on there. Anything else you are especially proud of that you would like to single out for recognition?
I would recommend to any bass player that they pick up a Morley Power Wah Boost from the Telray era. And I use it in my signal path almost all the time, not with the wah function necessarily, although I prefer the wah function on the Morley Telray era over any other bass wah out there because the sweep is so much broader.
Mm-hmm.
But the boost function is incredible. It's like this squashy little patterns, and you can also, and it also puts a little bit of dirt on the overall tonality, a little grittiness on the overall tonality. So if you can find one for a good price, anybody's welcome to try and, you know, contact me through my website. And I'm happy to tell you there's a guy, I can't remember his name or else I'd tell you now, but he refurbishes Morleys. And I bought this Power Wah Boost from him, and it's one of the best pedals that I've ever bought. And yeah, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm way, way, way into Cliff Burton, and I was kind of Cliff's gear. And apparently at one point he was using the Morley Power Wah Fuzz, which has the fuzz function in it. But I guess he transitioned maybe to a boost instead and was getting the fuzz directly from a Big Muff or something. And it's amazing. But you have to be careful with it because I have it set on like 0, and I think it has like a 60 dB boost potential.
Oh, shit.
And I nearly like blew up my amp in my head checking it out for the first time when I got it in the mail. Yes. But yes, that's the other thing that, you know, if I could bring like a huge pedal board to something and freak out, I would bring the Power Wah Boost.
So that's what we're hearing on Anesthesia Pulling Teeth is some version of the Telray Morley thing.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, we are.
Awesome.
And we're probably hearing it on the beginning of Damage Incorporated.
Yeah. Good shit.
Like that intro there. I think that's all Morley sweeps.
Awesome. I know when I sit down to demo a new instrument, whether it's at Guitar Center or a friend's house or do a fly-in and plug into something, I have a go-to soundcheck riff. Do you have a go-to soundcheck riff, Joshua?
Yeah, hold on. I think that I accidentally computer. So let me turn this back on. I kind of like, you know, you were talking about Spoon, and there was like an era where a lot of that Girls Can Tell stuff is like influenced by Fleetwood Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the chain. You know, that's pretty cool.
Yes.
And then like in the Spoon days, Jim and I would always rehearse. We would always like, you know, when they would have like, you get a bass tone and then drums and stuff, and then they'd have the rhythm section play together. We'd usually play like the bass line to Me and the Bean, which was like. Stuff like that.
That's great.
McCartney's bass line at the beginning of Back to the Egg, the Wings record, Back to the Egg, Reception. I think is the song that comes in with that bass line. It's like. That's just like sick, you know, and it's on like a Wings album or something, you know, which no disrespect to Wings, but like there's all this McCartney genius, even in like some of the stuff that you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But actually, that's a pretty good damn album. Back to the Egg is actually a really good album.
Yeah, I'm so conflicted about McCartney. It's like Ram is my McCartney record. Like that's the one that when I reach for a McCartney
Yeah.
record, that's the one I put on. It's like 3 or 4 of the greatest songs that have ever been written by a human being. And then like some shit that's just, outright embarrassing. It's like you just wish that Lennon or Harrison or somebody was there to say, buddy, why don't we edit this down a little bit and maybe
Yeah.
take it back to the woodshed. It's like so confounding. His
Yeah.
legacy is so strange.
Back to the Egg is like that. I feel bad. I don't want to talk smack about this guy, but he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and he's had great success. He played with Paul McCartney and Wings. But Denny Lane, it's like Back to the Egg is like killer song, killer song, killer song, killer song. First 4 songs, I think. And then Denny Lane's song is like track 4, track 5, and it's like the car fails. It's like the engine goes out or something. It's like you're just like cruising along, and then all of a sudden like it stops, and you're just like, oh my God, why did they sequence it like this? Why did he allow this to happen?
Yeah. No, I think if I'm in Wings, I'm just real happy to be there. I do not need a writing credit. I'll just go along for the ride, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably a good salary.
Yeah, not too shabby.
Probably some good benefits.
Yeah, you probably get some decent health care and stuff. Or if you're British, you probably don't need it. We may have alluded to this earlier, but I do like to ask folks if there's a piece of gear that they've parted with they wish that they could have back. Would that early 80s P bass be yours, or is there something else that's gotten away that you would love to have back in your hands?
I think that's just really the only one. I mean, I sold the first EB3 that I got. I got a 69 in 2002. It was like a true Gibson. I have problems with you, but it was a true EB3. 69 EB3. I bought it at Austin Vintage Guitars and for like $900. And it had these it had the chicken head knob, and it could create these incredible sounds, but it was really thin and like sounding, and I favored the rear pickup a lot, and it was really kind of thin sounding, and it also just kind of felt fragile. The neck was a lot thinner at the nut, and it was like a brown, and so I sold it several years ago. I'd like to have that one, but I actually prefer the way this one feels a lot more, even if it doesn't get kind of the cooler tonalities or unique tonalities. But yeah, the first Fender, probably that first bass. Yeah.
It's nice to, I've had basses like that before. I had a 69 Starfire that, man, I would pay a lot to have that back, but it was the kind of thing where it was almost temperamental is a way that I would describe it. Like when it and I were getting along, it would just create these incredible sounds, and the neck was just wicked fast, and I could just blow all day on it. But I never wanted to take it out to a gig because I was terrified, especially being semi-hollow. I was terrified that something would happen to it. And there were other days where it just didn't feel like it felt temperamental, like it was just being bitchy, and it wouldn't give me what I was asking for. So I feel like
I had a 66 Starfire.
Nice.
Same thing.
Yeah. They're incredible instruments.
I traded it for this piece of Aguilar gear. I got like a tube, a DB359, and it would have been nice to have kept the Starfire, but I've never been sentimental about instruments. I mean, that first bass would be cool, but I don't really lose sleep about it. I've just been refining what I really need and will like and what works for me. And I really feel like I have figured that out. And I probably wouldn't play that first bass very much, but
right.
But it'd be nice to look at or see it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Put out a wanted ad or like something on Tinder or something and see if it'll turn up. I like to ask people about an iconic bass line. Like I know there are bass lines I think of when I think of that classic era Spoon stuff, but is there a bass line that people come up to you and ask you about, or one that gets lots of applause, or one that you are especially proud of creating? And would you walk us through it if you could?
Sure. When Spoon was really like taking off, and it was really like the whole thing was firing on all cylinders, like right around when Gimme Fiction came out, we played in New York, and I realized that something was happening because I was playing the bass line to my mathematical mind. And I can tell the story about it, but this fan, this person who was attending the show in the front row, was miming the bass line to me. And I thought, fucking A, man. Like,
we've made it.
Something like, a dream, you know, dream as a kid when you're like, someday I'm gonna make it. And that was like, kind of like, is this what it looks like? You know, it was just like trip, man. It was a total trip. And it was such a beautiful experience to see that, to feel like, whoa, this kid is like, he's like knows this tune so well that he's into the line, and he knows that it's a slide thing, and he's like doing all the slides. And so, and recently I was watching Netflix with Jennifer, my girlfriend, and this documentary, Secret Love. And it's about these two women who had a 50+ year relationship that was mostly in secret to their family, because it was a same-sex relationship. And they had this incredible story. And in the middle of this documentary is my mathematical mind. And I thought, like, whoa, it's just incredible. So the story behind that one is just that Britt came, we were at the end of a rehearsal and a practice at Jim's place in his garage, which became a studio, which is now Public High, his recording studio. And he said, I have this thing. And he sat down, and I think it was maybe like a Yamaha DX7 or something on the floor, sitting kind of cross-legged, and he started playing the piano part. And Jim and I just kind of, or at least as far as I remember it, Jim and I just kind of looked at each other and pretty much played pretty close to what the part became. And it was really just kind of like a kind of talking about McCartney again. It was like a McCartney kind of comp, where I was just doing slides on G. Maybe I heard the fuzz there. Tell me if it's too loud or not loud enough.
I will.
Could you hear that okay?
Yeah, I think Zoom is doing its auto background noise rejection thing a little bit. We got some of it.
That's all good. So it's just like a slide on G, and then I just do some like kind of bluesy pentatonic stuff where it's just like G. And that's really it. Like when we were recording the song, I kind of had like a McCartney vibe, but then also like I remember listening to Close to the Edge by Yes.
Sure.
And it's like 3 minutes into the title, to the first song, when Bill Bruford and Chris Squire lock in, and they come in with just that fucking heavy groove, that boom, doom, back. And it's just, I was like, that's what I want this part to feel like. And so those kind of things were what was kind of like, I was just germinating. And then I think after we had that rehearsal and I was doing the slidey stuff and the little bluesy stuff, or the little fills, Britt called me that night, or we talked on the phone, and he was like, I really liked the slide stuff that you were doing on that tune. And I was like, okay. So I marked that and thought, have the slides in there. And I guess that's maybe the most kind of, it's the thing that kind of had a lot of power to it. And I've had people tell me how much they liked the song, and, you know, but I'd also say that, like, I don't know if you read about that, but like I played on this soundtrack, this video game soundtrack, and it was for Red Dead Redemption, and
Yeah.
it was this offshoot of the original game, which was about zombies. And it was like I used my Morley wahs on it, and there was this whole moment where I realized that like a Cliff Burton moment was coming together, because Cliff was a huge fan of Dawn of the Dead,
Yes.
which is all about zombies. And I'm playing this like line in the middle of like zombies being killed with like a wah, and it's all like inspired by him. So there's that kind of stuff, and other things that I recorded on with like singer-songwriters back in Austin that were in totally different fields, like AAA radio, and having those kind of experiences is pretty neat. I feel really blessed.
Yeah. My Mathematical Mind is such a strange song to have been a big hit too. I mean, it's like this shuffly, like loping. I don't know, it's 3, 4, 6, 8. Like how?
Yeah,
It's kind of remarkable that one crossed over in any capacity. It's a brilliant song. Don't get me wrong. It just doesn't seem like a thing that you would map to college radio or whatever. It's phenomenal. Quite an achievement.
Totally. Kind of the Spoon story.
Yeah.
Kind of the Spoon story, in that it's a little left field, but yet it's like it kind of breaks through in some way. And since we're here geeking about bass, I think that was recorded on a 62 Jazz reissue that I bought when Spoon signed to Elektra, and Elektra gave us some money for a budget. And I think at the same pawn shop that I sold my original Fender Precision bass to get that Rickenbacker is where I bought the jazz bass that was recorded, My Mathematical Mind. I don't have that one anymore. You sold that.
Crazy. Is there a simple or a stupid trick that you can show me today that can make me a better bass player?
It's crazy. I'm so glad we got to talk. So thank you for doing this, because it all kind of is coming full circle in the sense that like, it's the slide stuff. And that's all back in the beginning. Like the first trick that I ever learned was Gene Simmons. I was watching Gene Simmons on like the Animalized VHS cassette with my friend Mark. And like the first thing he does is he walks out into the front of the crowd in Detroit. I think that's where the concert was recorded, was in Detroit. He's got the Axe bass on. He's got like a loincloth, like cod piece or something. And the first thing he does is he like does a slide.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, I think it brings energy, and it makes it really dynamic, and you feel like something's about to happen, or it's taking you on a journey, or like loping, like that whole loping feeling with My Mathematical Mind has a lot to do like the doom 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 ring ding, all that kind of stuff. So I would say a slide. Work on slides. Just work on octaves for a while. Just follow your dots, But it's like the first trick that I was so impressed with myself when I could like do a Gene Simmons. I still do them all the time.
That's awesome. I guess I started paying attention to my slides over the last couple of years. So much of it is like almost, I guess I would say unconscious. I don't even realize that I'm doing it, but like as I've had to, I think it's been in sort of like concentrated listening sessions where if I'm learning a record that I haven't played in a long time to go on tour or something, I'll make a playlist. I'm like, God damn, I'm sliding all over the place. I don't even know if normal, civilians hear that stuff, but like, it's interesting to me. It's something else of interest to like make people turn their heads at. Yeah, that's a great tip. I appreciate it. Typically I only have one more question.
It is. Yeah, you're welcome.
Typically I only have one more question, which is, I would love to hear a hysterical story from the road, but I definitely want to get to talk some about Teachrock. So you want to do Teachrock first, and then we'll close out with our ridiculous road story?
Absolutely.
So tell me about the organization, how you got involved, and then I will tell you my brief Little Steven anecdote.
Okay, I'm excited to hear that. Um, I was living in Nashville. I left Boston, moved to Nashville, was pretty much doing music full time. I was touring with a guy named David Cook. He was an American Idol winner, and I was also teaching part at a couple colleges and universities in Middle Tennessee. I was teaching at Middle Tennessee State and at Nashville State Community College, and Nashville just wasn't working for me. And I looked for a job in. I started looking for a job. I was married at the time, and I was talking to my wife about it. I was down in the dumps, and I looked for a job, and I think I went on to idealist.org, and I saw a posting for this foundation that wrote curriculum that used arts integrated in the history of music, and I thought I could do that. And turns out David Cook knew Steven's wife, so I sent, and I'd already applied for the job, but I also sent it to her, sent her my resume and my cover letter, and went and interviewed and got the job and moved to New York. And it's been an amazing experience. My master's degree in music was in music history and literature, and a lot of it had to do with popular music. And so it's been a great way to bring all of that into, and then also like a service, because we're providing resources to teachers and students, and they desperately need it, especially when it comes to arts education. And I have a real passion for teaching. As I was saying, I taught in Nashville, I taught at a college in Austin, I've taught at Hunter College here in New York. And so I have a real passion for teaching. So it brings together all of these worlds that I love. And it's a pleasure to do it. I'm really thrilled to be a part of it.
That's awesome. It's a brilliant mission. Is there a way that normal folks can support the foundation, or how can people do that if they're interested?
Absolutely. They can go to teachrock.org, and we have a donate button right at the top of our site, and everything is free. All of the curriculum is free. We depend on donations. So we depend on fundraising to support the mission and to basically pay our salaries and stay open. So yes, please go to teachrock.org. Feel inclined, check it out. If you like what you see, please donate. We do have an event on December 21st where we're going to have some amazing artists coming out: Eddie Vedder, Margot Price, Tom Morello. That's December 21st, and it's Stand with Teachers. I don't know if you'll be publishing this before then, but if you do, and if somebody sees it, December 21st, you can buy a ticket, which will get you access to watch the streamed show. And the ticket is a donation that goes to the work that we do at Teachrock. So thank you for asking about that, Ian.
Of course. I have been a little I'm not like a big Springsteen guy. Like I kind of ambivalent about Springsteen, but I was interning at a recording studio in Midtown Manhattan. The year must have been 84, 85. It was Arthur Baker's Shakedown Sound.
Awesome.
So Arthur Baker was, he'd made all his money doing Planet Rock, and he put it into this recording studio in Midtown. One of the first SSL boards in the country. Like, it was like a legit setup. Shep Pettibone was in there all the time doing Madonna remixes, so he was in and out of there. The Latin Rascals were in B a lot doing remixes and stuff. And one day, I guess, Steven Van Zandt was, I don't know if he was coming around checking out studios to track in or whatever. But the thing that impressed me about him was that he made a point to go to literally every person in the room: the receptionist, the tape runner, like, the guy, I was sweeping up and running tapes all around town. And like, the technician and the engineer, and Arthur, like, he went around and introduced himself and shook hands with literally every person in the room. Nobody else who ever came through there, like, took the time to do anything like that. And I've just been a little Steven stan ever since. He's just seems like an authentic, amazing guy. And I think everything that he's done and accomplished, and where he's put his energies, in the last, what has it been? It's been 35 years since then. Just continue to bear that out. He's a stand-up guy, and I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. It's wild that you said that, because he just got that you told that story, because I probably heard, working in the office, it's an open office environment. We have an office in Greenwich Village, and it's all of his organizations there, the foundation, Teachrock, and then his radio station, and the studio is next door. And he was putting together, he just put together a box set of all of his records, and he re-released them, and he was getting all these bonus tracks and everything together, and he was listening to stuff that he did with Arthur Baker. So I probably overheard sessions that you worked on.
Amazing.
So it's like, it's amazing, man.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, because I think Arthur Baker is the person that he worked with for Sun City. The Sun City record, I think, is with Arthur Baker.
Phenomenal. I never even made that connection. I have not gone back through the catalog, but that would be, I wouldn't doubt it. So awesome. Keep up the great work there. And lastly, leave us with, if there is a hilarious, self-effacing, absurd story from the road, if you're so inclined.
The only one that comes to mind is the one that I'll share, which is a long, long time ago. It's a Spoon story. This is the late 90s. I think that series of sneaks, it was the summer of 1998. And Spoon's manager at the time, a guy named Frank Gironda. And Frank Gironda was part of Lookout Management with Elliot Roberts, who manages Neil Young.
Okay.
And if you remember the Horde tour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the Horde tour with all of those bands and kind of like jam bands, but we were on the BF stage, you know, we were like, we were on this tiny stage, and somehow we befriended I befriended these girls that wanted to come to the show, and somehow I arranged that I would give them my pass so that they could come into the show. They gave me some story or something. Somehow they gave me a story that like they'd been ripped off for the tickets that they bought. They weren't valid tickets. So I gave them my pass. And as I was giving them my pass through the fence, security guard grabbed me. And this was in Albany, New York. And one of the girls was already there. She had already come over with my pass, and we were giving it to her other friend. And he grabbed me and the one girl and took us to like, the state police were like providing security for the whole grounds. And they took me to like the state police barracks or whatever it was on site. And like, I was freaking out, and I was like thinking that we weren't going to get paid, and that Frank Gironda was going to hate me, and I was going to get, you know, ostracized. And then there were like all these like people there that had been like getting into fights. Like some guy had a broken nose with blood, and people were like recuperating from like whatever they'd been doing. And we got let go, and like, they just told me to stop being an idiot, and they kicked me out of the barracks. But like stuff like that, you know, stupid shit like that. This was like 22 years ago or something.
Yeah. And you guys hadn't played yet, I assume.
I don't think we played yet. Maybe we'd played in the afternoon or something. And it was such a weird like gig. It wasn't really like, I mean, imagine like Series of Sneaks, like era Spoon, like the three of us playing like this kind of post-punk, like indie rock, like with like Blues Traveler on another stage, you know, or what's that Canadian band that I can't remember their name. They were on that tour too. 1 week Since You Looked at Me or whatever that band was. Like imagine those bands, and then imagine like a Series of Sneaks like playing on a small stage, you know. It was just like it didn't really gel that well.
The bands that I totally get that, and the disconnect there. I will also say that the bands who seem to get adopted by the jam band crowd, like I can no longer predict these things. Like there are bands that are like way out who I would never think that like a Blues Traveler fan would like, and all of a sudden they're on the jam band circuit. Like whatever my detector is for what jam band people will like is like completely broken.
And nothing against jam bands, but it was just like, you know, we were listening to like Wire and Gang of Four, and like those are like 90-second songs, and then like the other thing is like 22 minutes, you know? So it's like, didn't necessarily, it was an odd scene, and that just like put like the rotten cherry on top of it, like getting busted by the security in New York State Police.
Oh my God. Well, that's all the time we've got, Joshua. Thank you so much for
Wow.
making the time to hang out. This was great getting to know you. I'll be eternally grateful to Sean of Nervous Curtains and other things for putting us in touch. Talk about stand-up dudes. Sean is one.
Sean.
Thanks
Yeah.
again. Don't forget to support Teachrock. And what are your current musical endeavors that you're working on? We need to at least get a shout out to those.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing like a kind of, again, a kind of a McCartney thing. I'm recording 5 songs right now here at home in this space. I'm going to release them in 2021, and I'm determined to do everything. Play every single instrument, program everything, write all the lyrics, every note. So look for that in 2021. I'll be self-releasing it, just probably via Bandcamp and SoundCloud and those kind of places, Spotify, and I'll be messaging out about it from joshuazarbo.com and on social media.
Awesome. We will definitely keep our eyes peeled for that. Thanks again, Joshua, and best of luck. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you, Ian. Take care, man.